Well, hello there, and welcome back to a video where you are going to learn more about FileMaker Pro. My name is Matt Petrowski, bringing you these videos. I have a website over at FileMakerMagazine.com, but I'm putting these videos out here on YouTube. In this video, we're taking a look at button icons, all the different ways that you can get buttons onto your, or icons onto your buttons. Say the right thing, Matt. Stick with me. We'll be on my desktop in just a few. All right, so what do we have going on for today's lesson? Well, in today's lesson, we're taking a look at the fun thing, the thing that we all like to do, and that is add buttons to our icons, make our solutions much more attractive. Now, obligatory, if you found this as a result of a YouTube search, then you can, of course, click on the channel icon here on the YouTube watch page, or however you're watching this. If you're watching it embedded, you're going to have to click on the YouTube logo, go to YouTube, click on the channel icon, and you'll be able to access all of these videos in series. Hence, this is video number 6. I think of my 4th series. I've got 3 other series on YouTube, and you can watch them all in order 1, 2, and 3. Just go to the channel icon, and you will see those playlists. And if you would like to follow along with this video, I tend to provide a follow along file. You will find that in the description down below where you can access the file. There should be a link that you can click on and you will access the same file that we are going to go through right now. Time track. Now I'm also referencing another database, and you'll find a link in the description there as well. It's a database that was made freely available because of a free collection of icons, and it's called the Indots Icon Manager. Beautiful database in terms of both implementation and presentation. I mean, beautiful. They just implemented really well working with SVG, and we'll take a look at SVG in this video. So this file that we're going to work with, time track, that we have right here, one of the things that I have going on in particular is this button. It is the projects button where I click on this, and a button for the most part looks like a button, but this is not a button. When I click on it, it's bringing up a popover. Now typically, I do not like to make a button that looks like a button where you're going to click and have something happen and then it be a popover. I like to give the user some type of indication, and we can, of course, do that with an icon. So as I go into layout mode on this file, you're probably already aware, and I'm working with FileMaker 16, and I forget when they added, I'd have to look in the help to find out when they added SVG support. And SVG, when I say that, it's a scalable vector format. What I mean by that is when we take a look at our setup right here, where we can choose from any one of these options, just a standard icon with text below, an icon with text above, text to the side, text to the right. That's what I'm talking about as an SVG. Now, there's an old way of doing things with a FileMaker database, and that is you would basically have a graphic object, you would drag the object into the FileMaker layout, and then you would simply overlay that object on top of the button itself. So that would be a 2-part step where you have the graphic, which would be on top of the button, and it would be sitting there, and you have these 2 objects. Now, personally, when it comes to buttons, I've always hated grouping objects. Number one, when you group objects in FileMaker, it does keep them together, but if there are things that you need to change, getting to those individual objects used to be a big hassle. That was prior to FileMaker 16 giving us, if you go to the View menu, and look at this one right here. Hopefully my head's not blocking that. Layout objects. So these layout objects, or this new panel that we have, gives us the ability to select an object within a group of objects. And we'll probably talk about that a little bit later. But if you're working with an older FileMaker database, maybe you inherited it or it came from somewhere and you've got this whole grouped scenario, my suggestion is take the time and get rid of it. Especially if everybody's using FileMaker whenever they release the icons, again, the help, it's either 14 or 15, probably 14 is when they had a lot of major changes. So when I double click this and I'm able to select from the icons here, I can give myself the indication that this is going to be a popover. Now for me, that is going to be, the button is going to be on the right-hand side of this. And I'm going to scroll through here and I'm going to look for a down arrow widget, and I'm going to find that there is not one. I do not have a down arrow widget. Now, out of all of these icons that are presented to us, these are ones that FileMaker has either created themselves or maybe they license, but it's a very small subset, a tiny subset of all of the different possibilities that we could add. Now you notice that I do have some black buttons right here, or I have some black icons. If I selected that, we would be able to see that it is an iOS looking switch. I of course can increase the size of this, which is really wonderful because a scalable vector graphics format is, hence the word, scalable. It's defined by math in order to say what the object looks like. So ideally we want to use that for most all of our buttons or for all of our icons. It will work with flat icons and colored icons. You can put both within here. Just because FileMaker presents flat doesn't mean that you only need to use flat. And the time at which this was implemented, that's when iOS was popular and, well, it went to the flat design. We all know that the iOS had the gradient and multicolored icons. I tend to still favor those myself. I'm fine with the flat look, but they really took away a lot of things as far as I'm concerned with regards to user interface that made us have to get used to new things, such as if I see text, just plain text, well, go ahead, assume that it's a button and you can click on that. Well, that didn't used to be the case. You used to have to define the outer boundaries of a button. Neither here nor there, and I'll leave that up to you. But we have these icons, and we need to get more icons in here. Now, clearly, we have a plus and a minus, which means we can add these icons, but we have to know something first before we're just going to add icons. Number one, it's always best to use a consistent look and feel across your solution. If you have just a bunch of different icons, all randomly looking, it doesn't benefit the look of your design. It's nice if you can come up with a consistent look using the same type of icon design. And there's a number of them out there. We'll take a look at some of them. We'll also take a look at how we can get our own version of an icon into FileMaker. So first, let's take a look at our available resources. Our available resources, as I switch over to a file right here to the theme that has been integrated from FileMakerThemes.com. In fact, why don't we take a look at this?
This video has been brought to you by FileMakerThemes.com. It's a one-stop shop for choosing a theme to apply to your new or existing FileMaker solution. When considering your next move toward advancing the look and feel of your FileMaker solution, don't forget to visit FileMakerThemes.com.
All right, so thanks for taking a look at that. If you are interested in themes, great place to go pick those out. In this theme file that I got from FileMaker Themes, which has been integrated into this file, so you already have it, you won't have necessarily the theme file itself, which is this right here. So there's this area called extras in the theme file, and these are not, hidden by any means. These are some of the resources that I suggest and use. Glyphish is one of the first places where I bought an icon collection where everything, in fact, I think they were one of the first to offer a full suite of icons that matched iOS. And I bought them. I mean, it's really inexpensive. For $99, you get, I think in this case, they say something like 1,600 outline icons, which is pretty nice, and they all match. Now, it is becoming a little bit dated because this was when iOS was released with the flat icon look, but I mean, for $99, I consider it totally worth it. But of course, there are all kinds of other resources. The one that I use the most is this one right here called the Noun Project. Now, the Noun Project is really awesome. At least they might have an application on the Mac side of or on the Windows side of things. If not, I wouldn't be surprised, but I do know that they have one on the Mac because I use the Mac version of their own application, and we're going to see that really quickly here. Icon Finder and Icons 8. Icon Finder there, you can see that it actually wants the window to be dragged out before it will resize and then show us. A lot of these services for icons charge on a monthly basis. That's where we've been heading for a long time with regards to software, and in some cases it's worth it. In others, I prefer to pay a flat amount, get the full suite of icons, and you can search the web for those. Icons 8 and Flat Icons are just two others, but there's many others that you can use. So I'm going to be showing you in this video Noun Project and how I use that. But let's take a look at a freely available resource, the Indots Icon Manager, the thing that I was saying is so beautiful. Let's hide this and we will go and show the Icon Manager. Now this is something that you can get for free, and I have put the link into the comments below in this video. And it's at this URL right here. The only place you can really find it is on this blog post. They don't have it in resources on their main webpage, so if you just go to indats.com, you may not find it. You have to know and search, and it was 2016, October 14th, it looks like, when they released it. This is a FileMaker database that takes a collection of icons that were made available completely free right here at Sync Fusion Metro 3, and basically everything that you see here on the website is what Indots took from this website, where they've got application, banking, brand identity, and all of these SVG icons. They can have color applied to them when you put them into FileMaker, and the cool thing is, as we hide Safari, they made it available in this FileMaker database. Now, when you download and get this database, it will not look like it looks right here. The primary difference being that all of the icons will probably be black. Now, the reason that they are gray here in my copy is because I have made a single change and modified it, and we're going to see why I made that change, because it's an important part of understanding how icons work within FileMaker, at least SVG icons. So let's just take any one of these. For example, I've got some arrows. I can search right here. Let's put in and see if they've got a down arrow that I want to use. They might have one. There's a really thick one, but I'm looking for a thinner look on my solution. But we'll go ahead and take that really fat one and put it in here. Down arrow. So the way that this works in this database, this is all FileMaker. In fact, if I go into layout mode, I have full access to the file to see how they developed it. Wonderful to learn from if you're going to. So all of the icons are being shown within a web viewer. They're all SVG, and you can show SVG within web viewers, so why not show them? They have a very nice system in here where they have a very condensed collection of all of the icons. Then they expand them out into the database, creating a new record for each. But initially, the way they store all of the icons, however many there are, let's say there's 1,000 of them, they're storing it all in one field, which is really pretty cool. And then they just create new records for all those. I'll let you research the database and take a look at it. Use the debugger. Debugger, that is your best friend in all of development for FileMaker. So once I have the icon that I want to use in this Indots database, I click this little icon right here. They do give the ability to shift the icon and move it out of the view box, to rotate it, to do all kinds of different things, make it a favorite if you'd like to. But ultimately, you're going to export it out of this database and put it somewhere where you're going to be able to import that icon into FileMaker. So we select my desktop here. It tells me that the icon was exported successfully. I'll hide that window, come to my database, and now I would be able to get that in, presumably. Let's go ahead and double click the icon. Brings the popover for adding that. I've already selected where I want the icon. I would click the plus, and I'd simply just go select what was exported. Now, one thing I'm not necessarily fond of is you can't name it whatever you want when you export it. You can go in and you could rename this in the Finder if I wanted to have this be a different name. Of course, once I import it, it's really not that big of a deal. I don't see the name, and it's sort of just all transparent and hidden to me. When I insert this, my version is gray because I made a change to all of the fields where the icons are stored in the Indots database. For you, when you download the Indots database, it will be black. Now, the reason is, we'll just take a look at the file and I'll explain it. There are settings on the SVG that when it's exported, those settings determine whether or not FileMaker can take over control of the color of an icon. And it works like this. As long as there is no colors specified on the SVG, then FileMaker can assume that I can safely apply colors to this icon. We'll see how you apply colors. Otherwise, if there is a color that's applied on the icon, then you have to have a special tag in the SVG file, and we're going to see how you edit that in order to say, FileMaker, you're allowed to apply color to this. So if there is no color, by default, an icon is black in SVG. And if there is a color, and I just made it gray, then we have to say, yeah, you can override this. Don't worry, we'll take a look at how this works. So what I have now is I have my icon here, which gives me a clear representation of the fact that I can expose this, or when I click on this, what's going to happen. So I go into browse mode, and I get the look that I want. It's not just a button that says projects, it's projects with a down arrow, very much like we have here. Here I'm going to get a list, here I'm going to get a popover. Maybe I want to use something a little bit different, but ultimately I'm starting to add the icons that I want. So now let's take a look at the process that I go through in order to use icons. First off, as I mentioned, the database, or the way that I like to use icons, is the Noun Project. So on the Macintosh, the Noun Project has a really cool little app. I don't know why I stumbled for that word, but this application allows you to search for pretty much anything and everything across the universe of the Noun Project. Now, the Noun Project started a while ago, and it allows individual artists to contribute their icons, and then at that time they were charging, say, $1 for this icon, $1 for that icon. Well, then we went to that model where it's pay on a monthly basis or pay on an annual basis for some software, and then we will be responsible and distribute the funds. And that's what the Noun Project does. I think for $99 a year, what they do is they track how many icons people use, and then I think they pay out the individual authors. I actually have a few on the Noun Project that I created, but that's how it works. And for the most part, once you pay, you can use most all of the icons royalty-free and commercial, as far as I'm aware. So in this case, I would search for arrows here, and I mean anything you could want. The other day I needed a backpack, and my goodness, to be able to just have this list of backpacks that come up and choose from, I mean, there's a suitcase, there's this guy with a backpack on. It's pretty awesome. The difficulty is, as I explained, ideally you want to find a consistent look and feel for all of the icons. Obviously, if I picked this one and then go select another icon from another collection, they won't necessarily match because they're not all from the same artist or don't have the same look and feel. So I think you get that. You can go on the nounproject.com, the website, and look for where a particular icon came from and see if there are companion icons in that same look and style. So that's what I would suggest if you want to use Noun Project. So now the question is, how do I get this into FileMaker so that it can be color controlled? And maybe if I want to edit it, I use an application called Sketch. And we'll create a new document here. This program is a vector editing program, and you're going to have a vector editing program if you're going to be doing your own custom versions of FileMaker icons, but this will allow us to see what happens when we export the icon, and I'm going to give you a very cool tip about a particular plugin that I use with Sketch if you choose to do that. Unfortunately, since I'm not doing this on Windows, I don't know of an equivalent Windows program other than Adobe Illustrator. I've used Adobe Illustrator and Sketch. I don't like that I have to pay for the Adobe Creative Suite, so I use Sketch. So let's go search for arrow and see if we can find a down arrow. We can even be more specific and look for down arrow and see if, oh, there we go. Right there, right off the bat, I get pretty much exactly what I'm looking for, a thin little arrow. I don't have to take the time to design it, nothing. So over here in Sketch, I create what is called an artboard first. And here's how this works when you're going to do something for FileMaker. This is my suggestion. In FileMaker, there's so many different ways that you can manage graphics, but one of the easiest ways is to create a graphic, especially when it comes to SVG, at the size that you want with the spacing that you might want within the realm of where the graphic is going to exist. What I mean by that is I'm going to go into layout mode here on FileMaker, and up in this header area, when I select this and I show the inspector, and I go to the number 1 tabbed area, the position, I can see that the height of this body part is 48 points. I still think in pixels for some reason. So ultimately what I'm going to have is I'm going to create a box that's going to be 48 by 48 because that's where the icon would be used. Now that's the most common use that I'm going to find for it, which would be on buttons or even adding it. I can't add SVGs onto anything other than buttons currently in FileMaker. Hopefully they will let us in the future, but I could add graphics, another video that we'll shoot. But ultimately I just do it at the size that I want, knowing that a SVG can be sized up or it can be sized down. It's all math, so it really doesn't matter. So 48 by 48 is my intended target, and I do the same over in my Sketch application. My artboard, which I have selected right now, I am going to make it, what was that, 48 by 48. So I just entered the values right here. Now, I want to show you this because I hope that someday a FileMaker engineer watches this. I've asked for this over and over and over again from FileMaker engineers. I don't know why they don't do this, but in most every graphics program and every program that deals with layout and design, you're able to do math right within the position tabs. So if I wanted this width to be 2 times, all I have to do is do ×2, hit tab, and it does it for me. FileMaker's Inspector Palette does not do that. So if you're a FileMaker engineer, let's get up to date and not let all these other programs basically have all these really cool features. All right, so we have our object. Well, I sized it out right there, and I'll just make sure that I can see it. All right, so where did my arrow go? There it is right there. Here's the cool thing. All I have to do is from this Noun project, drag and drop, and it falls right into my area. Now here, with this selected, I can zoom in. I did that with a command key that zooms in. It's not quite the dimensions I want, so I can drag this. You notice that as I drag, it is resizing all over the place, not what I want. So I'm going to Command Z or Control Z to undo that. And I'm going to, in this case, select this little lock to constrain the proportions on this object so that when I do drag it, it just stays exactly as I want. And the cool thing is, as I drag here, I'm not getting an exact match here. You can see the lines that show up as I'm dragging. And I can see that the arrow is off. Now here's a key thing. When you're dealing with graphics in FileMaker or anywhere, you need to take into account some math. So this object at 48 by 48 is an even object ending with 8. When I select this, the graphic, and I see that it's 33 and 16, the 33 works because I would assume that I would be able that the dead center of this as an odd value, I would be able to get right down in the middle. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't, but I always try to make it so that the graphic within the bounding area will work. Now what I mean by the bounding area is everything, obviously the outer bounds of this object. Now that's important to recognize because when I'm going to take this into FileMaker, I could have done this. I could have had this object be the exact width of this. I could have made it exactly 48, but the problem with doing that is when I put it onto certain places in FileMaker, the boundaries that are defined don't give me the white space that I might otherwise want to have around the object. So for me, it's a little bit easier when I'm going to export an SVG to give myself the space on the object, and I think that right there, I don't know which one's going to make it. Well, sometimes I do this. I'll take 48 and then I'll trim off 10, wanting 5 on either side, and I'll make it 38. And then let it adjust. You can see that what it does is it gets a imprecise value right there, but let's see if it dead centered that. Yep, you can see that red line going right through the middle of the front of the, it's slightly off, but works for me. So that is centered within my 44 by 44. So now I need to export this. There is a plugin that you can get for Sketch, which I really love because there are very specific settings that you have to have on the SVG output to tell FileMaker that something can use colors. And by colors, we mean conditional formatting. So when we go up here to the plugins, there is this plugin that you can get, I think it's free. It's on GitHub, and it's called SVGOCompressor. Now, as this comes up, you can see that I can edit the settings of this SVGOCompressor. Now, what this does is it means that when I save out of Sketch, it's going to save it into a FileMaker perfect format for me for icons because I've edited these settings. So let's take a look at the settings. It's going to open a text document. It's doing it in code, which is not what I wanted to show because of the spaces, or excuse me, because of the lack of returns. But we'll take a look at this. Let's see if I can zoom through this really quick and show you what's going on. It's all in JSON, so that's the only difficulty. What am I looking for right here? I'm looking for, yeah, this is not very fun for a new FileMaker learner, looking at obscure code. I don't think I'm going to be able to find it, and I'm not going to take the time in this video, there it is right there, to make this return delimited so we would be able to read it really nice, because it's not the super important thing. The important thing is that what this plugin is doing out of Sketch is it's automatically applying something that we need specifically on each and every object that's exported as part of our SVG. And that is this right here, that class names. I don't know where that just jumped off my screen. But there's also this right here, the fill. So that class that we saw, maybe it was before that. There it is right there, class names FM fill. This value of FM fill is the only thing that designates that when we export an icon from a program like Sketch or Adobe Acrobat, or not Acrobat, Adobe Illustrator, if there's a plugin for Adobe Illustrator, you'll have to search for it to find out whether there's something that will, as a result of exporting, when that export happens, the plugin gets to take over control and gets to apply certain settings, because otherwise you have to do this manually, and we'll see how. So these are just the settings that are in the SVGO compressor that automatically do what needs to be done to my icon so that I don't have to worry about it. So I'm going to show you first what it looks like when I export without the settings on. So we're going to go to Plugins. We're going to go to Manage Plugins here in Sketch. I'm going to turn off the SVGO compressor. I'm going to select my artboard, and I have to designate how this can be exported. In Sketch, this is down at the bottom. You click to make something exportable, and you basically say, I am going to export as an SVG. And when you do that, you'll see that it went from that pixelated format of a PNG, where it's going to raster an icon or a graphic, versus a vector format where it's going to be all nice and clean. So now when I export this, I export it, I'll do it to the desktop. I will call this down arrow and say OK. I am going to go to my desktop, create a new window, and we will take a look at this arrow so that we can see what a normal SVG looks like. Remind me later, Vim. All right, so fortunately my Vim editor colorizes all of the text really nice and cool here, so we can take a look at what's going on. So, as I stated, everything in an icon in an SVG format is all text. That's all that we're looking at right here. Everything that defines what that icon looks like is math, and it's this right here. If I do, let's see, this should work. Nope, let me see if I can get this. Set wrap. There we go. So in order to have that arrow defined, this polygon object says this is what the arrow looks like, and it has all these different point values. Now, we don't have to know anything about this. The graphics program took care of that, but what we do need to know about is that if there is a fill setting on any of the objects when we export, the only way that we can make that object be something that FileMaker can change the color on is with that class. So typically, I would have to do this. I would have to put class equals FM underscore fill. So that special little keyword right there of class FM fill on this polygon, which is the definition of the arrow, when I import this into FileMaker, tells FileMaker you are allowed to apply color to this using conditional formatting. And that's typically what we want with our icons. So if you don't know this, then it's very frustrating to go find an icon and then want to use them in FileMaker, and then want to use conditional formatting, but you can't. And that's because of this one little thing right here. Now again, if there was no fill, if this value did not exist anywhere on any object, such as what's exported from the Indots database, you can take a look at those with the text editor as well, then FileMaker assumes, okay, I can apply color to this. But the very second that you have a fill on any object, you have to set this value right here that says FileMaker, you're allowed to color it. And I think that's clear for now. So why is the plugin useful? We go back over to the plugins. We go to Manage Plugins here in Sketch. I turn on the SVGO compressor. And all of those settings, what they do is they take care of the fact that you want to do something when you export this. So we select my artboard. We will export that one. I'll select down arrow to get it to use the same name, and I'll put -2 and I'll click save on that one. So that one went through the SVGO compressor, and let's take a look at that one now. Open it in my Vim. Whoa, that is a lot different. Notice that in order for FileMaker to use an SVG, it does not need all of the rest of the stuff that a graphics program adds. The graphics program added a group. It added the fact that it was created with Sketch. It added all kinds of different stuff. If we want to get down to the raw icon, just the icon and it alone, all we really need is SVG and the actual math definition of the graphics. And you can see what the plugin did for me. It added class FM fill, and that's because I told it to add the fill color of white, which is 6Fs. That means that when I put this icon into FileMaker, I can see it in all of its glory in the heads-up display on FileMaker, and I'll be able to apply color. So we go over to my button now. We double-click. With my button setup, I'm going to import. I'm going to target that down arrow to. Don't really care about the name. Insert that. There is my icon right there. That's what I'm looking for. The nice little subtle effect, not the really fat icon, gives me what I want. And we check, can I apply color to this? Well, that's an easy matter of right-clicking on the object where you have an embedded icon. For right now, it's almost always going to be a button or a button from a button bar. I add conditional formatting, and in order to test, all I have to do is say true. True. You're going to do what I say. It is true, you will do what I say, and that is to color the icon, and let's say this purple for some reason. And we go into browse mode, and there it is. It's purple, and I have exactly what I want in terms of this solution. I can now control the color of the icon based on any of the possible conditions that might exist in my database. I can make it red when it's something that needs to be flagged. I can put a flag icon, and I can make it green, yellow, or red, or orange to represent different states. That is the power and the flexibility that we want when we're working with button icons. So I'll take that off for right now since I don't know that I'm going to need that, but I've explained to you the full explanation of getting icons into your database. You can use free resources like Indots. You can use existing icon resources, but they won't be FileMaker compatible until you make the conversion by adding that FM class. Now I used to have an automator that was in a program that I had released called the Theme Studio. That doesn't exist anymore. I should probably make that again, an icon automator that will basically walk through a collection of icons and apply that formatting for you. If in the Indots database you do want to use, you want to apply that coloring so that you can see it in the HUD, instead of it being black like it is here, you want to be able to see it in white so that you can select it. I can show you what I did in that situation. We go to the Indots Icon Manager. We go to Show or Manage our layouts. We take a look at all of our layouts. They have some layouts such as utility categories, utility icon, and utility. Utility icon is the one that you want, I believe. We click to open that. And here, what you will find is this is the table where Indots took the one record that they had with all icons included, all within one field, and then they processed that and chunk it all out into all of these different records, 4,000 different records. But in here, what will be lacking is this text right here, fill equals CCCCC class FM fill. Now I added this. And how did I add it to this database? Easy. As a FileMaker developer, we know that we can use the most dangerous function that we never want to expose to users. That is the replace field contents. So what I did is I'll cut this since it's already done. This is what it looks like when you get the Indots database. I simply ask myself, what do I want to replace? Well, in all of this text, there's only one time where the less than sign appears in front of SVG. So I simply said I want to select a less than SVG space, and I copied that. I went up to the records, went to our dangerous command of replace field contents, clicked on replace with calculated result, and of course I did this. I want to use a substitute, and I want to search within, what is that field? I don't know what it's called. Generated SVG is what it's called. So generated SVG, and the search string was SVG with a space, and I wanted to replace that with SVG with a space, same thing, along with, I thought I had it on the clipboard, but it would be fill equals, and then we would have our quotes, and this would be pound FFF. You can use lowercase. You don't lower versus upper doesn't matter. See 6 1 2 3, and then also class equals that special tag of FM underscore fill, and then I have my closing. Oh, I want the extra space at the end. I want my closing quote, and now if you're not aware, FileMaker won't accept this because each quote tells FileMaker when the calculation or when the string starts and stops. Well, I want to include these quotes within the string, so I have to put a slash in front of them. That slash is called escaping. And when we escape a quote, that means that FileMaker says, okay, this doesn't represent the start or end of a text string. What it means is you want to put in an actual quote, and that's what you're saying right here. So if I was to say, okay, on this, the replace would be ready. If I clicked this button of replace, it would run across all of the records that are in the found set, which is 4,131. And I'm not going to do that because I've already done that on this database. But that's what you would do with Indots in order to make it so that you can see the icon in the heads-up display and be able to make an easier selection. And of course, you know how to get that into your database with the plus or minus. All right, so only 7 minutes over my 30 minutes here, and we've got a lot of little comments. I'm looking over my other monitor here. Let's see what came in as a result of this. I'm going to fix this really quickly here. Put in fill equals... and 1 2 3 1 2 3, and put in class. And you don't have to understand what these actually do right now if you don't want to. What the class, these are all attributes, by the way. The fill attribute of the SVG tag, the class attribute of the SVG tag. You can have multiple attributes, as you can tell. But we'll talk about that in another video at another time. So we'll close that up, get everything clean, ready for any questions that we might have in our video chat. And I don't think, you'll have to bear with me 1 second here, I don't think I got ready for my chat window quite yet. I forgot to do that. Let me inspect that here and make some changes. Just be one quick little thing while I bring these on screen so that I can show them to you. And we'll switch to my video chat, make sure that we're going to get the right chat there on screen. All right, let's see what came in here as a result. All right. Hey, Drazen. Hi from Croatia. Font Lab. Okay, here's some of our good feedback. I use Font Lab 6 these days. I make a new project, PR for iOS, web, or FileMaker. I'll have to look at that, Hermund, in order to find out what you're talking about with regards to Font Lab, but hopefully very cool. Thank you. Excellent teacher. Thank you very much. Can buttons be turned into popover buttons and vice versa? Okay, good question on that one. Let's take a look. and look at the distinction between the two? Oh, that's an excellent question, actually. Let's hide our icon manager right here. We'll go to our database and take a look at the distinction between these two objects and what my suggestion is. The button object that we find right here has been in FileMaker since the beginning of, I'd say time, but that's not true, but since the beginning of FileMaker's time. So this button object right here allows us to use all of the icons. FileMaker implemented the icon support, but FileMaker does not have what we do have with our second option, which is a button bar. So we can always tell what an object is by going to the third area of the inspector, and when that object is selected, we can see that this is a button. It's classified as a button. Now, the distinction between the two is both of them will support icons, and the question is, can a button be converted into a popover? And the answer to that is no. In order, you have to explicitly select on the button and choose a popover and make that object in order to have one versus the other, the button versus the popover. But here's what you want to do. If you're working with FileMaker 16 today or a version in the future, my suggestion is don't even get into the habit of using those objects. If you can, ignore this little widget, unless you're working on a database that already exists, because here is why. The button bar object, which was added in FileMaker 14, has a lot more power at a minuscule additional cost. And the cost isn't even something that you really know about. So as I drag this popover, this button bar out, the one downside is FileMaker by default adds 3 segments to the button bar, but there is absolutely nothing that prevents you from getting rid of all of the segments down to just one. So if I select this segment, hit the delete key, it'll go away. Likewise, if I double click and the button bar setup, the heads up display, gives me this minus, I can click the minus to get rid of that. So what I'm dealing with now is a difference between an original FileMaker button right here, which in this one, I have access to be able to put content here in the button. Now, I can put any label that I want, any text string. Also, the button object will support merge variables and merge fields. So I could merge a table. Unfortunately for me, I have an expansion there. I'll shortcut that table field name. So I could merge in the value of a field into to be on a button. Likewise, I can merge in a local variable, which could come from a script. Not something super common. What is more common is probably a global variable. So that's cool. I can put that on a standard button. But I get that and more on a single segment button bar. So we'll take a look at that. Here on this single segment button bar, and again, when I select it, I can see quite clearly that it is a button bar object as opposed to a button, as opposed to this won't even show a popover. I have to double click it, and the popover is the object here that I would have to click on. But with a button bar, as you may already know, or maybe you don't, I get to select what the segment can be. This is the one object where I can choose, okay, I don't want this to be a button anymore. I now want it to be a popover. So the ultimate is using a single segment button bar button over a button or a popover. So excellent question. I'm glad you gave me the opportunity to answer that. And here is our biggest benefit with a button bar. The button bar gives us full access to the calculation engine. So if you're developing a modern day FileMaker database, currently, unless it was already developed and there are already buttons, go for the button bar and just use single segment button bars. You get all benefits of the other objects and more. The ability to switch and the ability to use the full calculation dialog box. Wherein here, you can of course put a merge variable just like you can with the regular button. Local variable, you have full access. I could do a FileMaker let statement, do all kinds of stuff with regards to what this button should, this single segment button bar should display. I have to be careful and clarify the difference between those. So hopefully that was a good answer for those of you that chose to stick around now that we're at 44 minutes. All right, let's see if we got any more questions that came in here. All right, the link from Indots does not work. Interesting. For their database. Let me take a look here. We'll switch really quickly. Maybe the link that's on the, I'll have to check it, on the comments is what he may be talking about. But there's the link right there displayed. If you go to that URL, you should be able to download the database, I believe. Click here for a free download. So hopefully that will be resolved. All right. Next question. Just to clarify, the blog works, the link, however, okay, Hermund was saying that too. The names of the way that you exported. Affinity, yes, another good one right here. I do have Affinity Designer. That also is a really good, that is this right here. Affinity Designer is another vector program, and I honestly just haven't used it. But I should take a look at that in terms of its output. Oh, I forgot. I'm sitting there being all intent, and I forgot to switch the video. Sorry about that. All right, let's go here. Affinity, much better in Adobe Illustrator. Affinity Designer, Cat SVG. Thanks, you're the best. Hello, everybody. For me, it's 22. All right, looks like we don't have any other questions that came in here. And for me, that means it's wrap it up time. 44 minutes, 45 minutes for a YouTube video. But hopefully it's all the content that you like to get. So as always, I always suggest that you subscribe. You can do it here on YouTube and you'll get notified, especially if you use the YouTube mobile app or what have you. Also, head over to FileMakerMagazine.com. Check out the content that we've got there. And if you're interested in a theme, FileMakerThemes.com. Next video in the series will pop up right here. And until next time, much luck to you and happy file making. Bye-bye.